we're going to talk about the present perfect, okay? So, first of all, let me move it to the middle. What does it look like? What does it look like? Does anyone know? Have.
Being.
Past participle. What is that? What is the past participle?
The third form of
Okay. Yeah, the third one, right? So we have the present, the base form, right? Base form. This one's called the simple past. But the third one is called the past participle, right? Just like speak is the base form. What's the past?
spoken.
And spoken. Great. Okay. How do you know those? Well, we have a really nice list of those in our books. Can you guys just please know that they are here in the appendix at the end of your book? They're great. You should study them. I'll also put those on Quizlet so you can just practice them on Quizlet. So we have plus the past participle of a verb, right? But is it just have, or can it be? It can also be has, right? Okay. So it looks like this, right? So she has read a book, okay? That's the affirmative. How do I make it negative? She hasn't read. Good. So you just, what do you do to make it negative? You just add not. You don't need to add a helping verb. You just add not after the helping verb. You don't need to add another helping verb, right? How do I make a yes/no question?
Has she
read a book? Good. So helping verb first, and then the main verb's over here, right? Verb subject, right? How do I make a WH question?
Why has she read a book?
Why? Why has she read? Why has she read a book? Perfect. Okay? So you can do that, right? But how do you know when to use it? How do you know when to use it?
Something happened and continue to present. In the past and finish in the now.
Okay, there's two times. There's two reasons why we use the present perfect. Two. And they're both, I think students confuse them a lot. Okay? So the first reason why we should use the present perfect is just like the present perfect progressive. Okay? So to explain an action that started in the past and to the present or even future, okay? It's the same. The only thing that's different is that usually you're going to use this one for the non-action verbs. Yeah, non-action. Because you can't use non-action verbs with ing, right? You can't say, I have been knowing English for 2 years, right? You can't say that. Why not?
Because non-action. No is not.
Yeah, that's non-action. So you can't. But this is the same thing as the present perfect progressive. So
we can't use the non-action?
You can't use non-action with ing, right? But you can use it with present perfect. And present perfect is have or has, just past participle, no ing. So how can we say this sentence with
I have done.
Okay, but this works, right? That means in the past I started to know English, right? 2 years ago, actually. Here's now. I continue to know English until now. It started in the past and continues. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? I have known English for 2 years.
And maybe
And maybe, hopefully, right, I'll know it tomorrow and the next day. Yes?
For the action verb, how we can understand, use past perfect or past perfect progressive?
The present perfect or the past perfect progressive.
Yeah.
So,
For action verb.
okay, so what I always tell for an action verb, so like run or live or read, right? I always tell my students, if you're focusing on how long something has happened, you should always use the present perfect progressive. This is always going to tell you how long, right? So if you're focusing on the time, 2 years, 1 month, 2 days, 4 semesters, then use the present perfect progressive. But for the present perfect, if you're not focusing on how long, there's a different use for it. Okay, so if you're focusing on how long, use the present perfect progressive. Okay, if the verb is an action verb. Okay, like I have been reading for 2 years. This is an action. It's better to use this than this. This one's better than this one. Why? Because we're focusing on how long. How long? 2 years, right? They're both grammatical, but this one's better because it's this form. So when we're focusing on how long, use this one unless it's non-action. Okay? That's what I just try to tell people. There's more reasons, but most of the time the best choice is this one if it's an action verb and you're focusing on how long.
But both of them are correct?
But both are correct. Yes, both are correct. Both are correct.
People like they using present perfect.
Yeah, this one is going to be more common if we're focusing on how long. Okay.
Can we use
Yes,
both?
that's why. You can use both. Yeah, they both have the same meaning. But let me point out something important. The only time this means this, the only time this means this is when you're using it with since or for, okay? If you're using it with since or for, it means this, okay? So again, for example, she has known English for 2 years. How long?
2 years.
2 years. And we're using for. When do we use for again? With a how long, right? A duration. I can also use since. She has known English since 2 years ago.
Since 2 years. No.
You have to use a specific time in the past. 2014, right? Okay. Now, if I take away the since and for, watch what happens. Now, okay, now this doesn't mean the same thing, okay? This just means it happened in the past. She knew English in the past. It's done. Maybe now she still does, maybe not. Maybe it's not continuing anymore, okay? So it's very important if you use since and for with the present perfect, it means that it's continuing, right? But if you don't, it has a totally different meaning. So if you use the present perfect without since and for, it means a finished action in the past with an indefinite time. What does indefinite mean? Indefinite means not specific. Not specific, okay? So, let me give you another example. Okay. How long have I been talking? Maybe 2 hours, feels like. No. The instructor has spoken for 30 minutes, right? What does this mean when I say has spoken, present perfect? That means this, finished?
No.
I'm using for and since, so what does it mean?
It's finished. It's starting
Starting past and continue.
It means
now.
Started in the past, continues till now. Why? Because I have for. When I use the present perfect with for, it means the action started in the past and continues until future. Now, what?
It's very close to progressive.
Right, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same as the progressive. The instructor has been speaking for 30 minutes. Has been speaking. Exactly the same. These two are exactly the same. Which one should you use? Which one's better? This one.
First one.
Yeah, the first one, because it's an action verb and we're talking about how long. So it's better to use that one. But what if I say oops. If I don't put since or for, then it means
in past finish.
and I use present perfect but no since, no for. What does that mean?
In past finish.
It's
But
finished.
It's very near to the past.
Yes.
I don't know.
So remember, this is without since and for. Okay? So no since, no for, right?
Excuse me.
This is with.
What's
Yeah.
different between this sentence and the instructor spoke?
Okay, good. And that's a question I'm gonna do that at the very end. But what does this mean, you guys? Instructor has spoken. What does that mean?
Like she's spoken already.
It's done. Do we know when she talks?
No.
Because it's indefinite, okay? The time doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's finished, right? Or for example, she has been to Rome. Okay. She has been to Rome. That's a great thing. That's a cool experience to have in your life. Is the time important? No. The experience, the action is important. She's been there. Do we care when it happened? Maybe not. The important thing is that it happened. So that's when we need to use that one, the present perfect. Okay? So let me give you an example now of all of them, and you can tell me what the difference is. Okay?
Excuse me. The instructor has spoken for 30 minutes. It means
Continue. But this
right
one,
now.
this one means happened in the past.
Why are you not using past?
Good question. So why are we using past? Remember, simple past, you focus on a finished time usually, a finished time. Present perfect, without since and for, we don't have a time. There's no time. The only time you could have, maybe if you want a time, is you could focus on how many times, like once, twice, right? 3 times. The instructor has spoken 3 times, right? The student has read a book once.
How about past progressive?
Okay, so I'm going to write example. We could analyze them, right? Okay. And then you guys tell me the difference. The students have been writing. Okay, we're going to leave in a second. The students have written. The students have written for 2 weeks, and the students wrote. Okay? There's really no time here except for here.
Right.
So the students have been writing. Are they still writing?
Yes.
Yes. Do we know how long? No. But we know it's still happening. We can know how long. If I want to say it's been 2 weeks, how do I do that?
The students have been writing.
You just add for or since, right? Okay. The students have written. Okay, is that still continuing?
No,
it's
finished.
Good. That's finished. Present perfect without since and for means it's finished. Do we know when they wrote? No. And it doesn't matter. If you care about when they wrote, you need to use the simple past. You can say, the students wrote last week. If you say last week, you have to use simple past because this is a finished time. Over here, if you say last week, the students have written last week, that is so ungrammatical, okay? You can't use a specific time in the past with this one, okay? You can say once, twice, 5 times. Here, the students have written for 2 weeks. Are they still writing or are they finished?
Finished.
No.
They still, I think they still reading.
Present perfect plus for or since means started in the past, continues. So they are still writing, okay? So this and this are the same.
But
Same.
the first one, for 2 weeks, if we say for 2 weeks, it means it finished.
This one? No, this is still happening. They have been doing it for 2 weeks. Maybe they're going to do 2 more weeks.
If you don't say for 2 weeks, what does it mean?
If you do, it just means we don't know how long, but it means they're still doing it. They're still writing. So this one, you don't have to have the time. It always continues. This one, if you don't have the time, it's finished. This one, if you do have the time, it continues. And this one, it's always done. It's always finished.